Shadows at Greystone Hall. A Regency romance of deception, madness, redemption, and enduring love. I was 17 when the letter arrived. It came with a wax seal bearing the crest of the Greystone family, whose name I barely knew but had heard mentioned once in my late mother's Bible, scrawled beside a family tree. The author, Lady Agatha Greystone, claimed kinship, distant but noble, and offered me a place at Greystone Hall. She spoke of Christian duty and family loyalty and assured me I would be cared for. I had nothing but a trunk of threadbare dresses, a silver ring that once belonged to my father, and a grieving heart. So I accepted. The coach that carried me south from Surrey to Somerset creaked and jostled through a cold autumn fog. By the time we arrived at Greystone, dusk had fallen, and the great house loomed like a sleeping beast. Ivy crawled up its grey stone walls, and the windows flickered faintly in the fading light. Lady Agatha greeted me in a high-collared gown of forest green, with sharp features and a voice that commanded silence as much as attention. Beside her stood her son, Mr. Horace Greystone, a tall man, perhaps 25, with a strong build and a pleasant enough face that was quickly marred by his fidgeting. His eyes darted constantly, never quite meeting mine, and he spoke slowly, as if every word cost him dearly. "You must forgive my Horace," Lady Agatha said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "He is a gentle soul, a little shy." I curtsied and murmured a polite greeting, but already a whisper of unease settled over me. The days passed in an unnatural stillness. I was provided with fine clothes, rich food, and a room overlooking the orchard. Lady Agatha encouraged me to take walks with Horace, who presented me with plucked roses, thorns intact, and asked odd questions. He once brought me a squirrel, stiff and lifeless, insisting it was a trophy from a hunt. His laughter, when it came, was always too loud, too sudden. The maids avoided him. Once I heard one scream behind the library doors. She left the hall before morning. And then came Captain James Greystone. He arrived on horseback, tall, sun-browned from service in India, with the bearing of a soldier and the gaze of a man who had seen war and returned wiser. He kissed Lady Agatha's hand, exchanged brief words with Horace, and then turned to me. "Lady Eleanor," he said, "Greystone Hall is brighter for your presence." It was the first time in weeks I felt truly seen. James was a distant cousin to Horace and Lady Agatha's nephew by marriage. He had once been heir to Greystone before Horace's recovery years ago. That detail puzzled me. What had Horace needed recovering from? No one offered an explanation. James and I fell into easy conversation. He asked about my interests, quoted poetry, and walked with me in the orchard. He never pressed, never presumed. His kindness stirred something in me that I hadn't known I still possessed. Hope. Lady Agatha watched us like a hawk. One evening I passed the east wing, usually locked, and heard sobbing. Not quiet sobbing. Violent, heaving sobs. Then muttering. Then silence. Later that night I found a hidden drawer in the desk of my room. Inside was a crumbling journal. It belonged to Isabel Greystone. I had never heard her name spoken. The entries were childish at first, sketches, musings about ponies and tea parties. Then they turned darker. Mother gave Horace medicine again. She says it makes him calm, but sometimes he hits the walls and screams, "James is going to be master one day. Mother says he's too clever for his own good." I told Horace no. He tried to pull my hair and said I was his. I ran. "I can't stay. I think she'll lock me in the tower if I don't go." The last pages were torn out. I dared to confront Mrs. Beryl, the old housekeeper, who had served the family for over 30 years. At first, she denied everything, but her hands trembled as she folded linen. And finally, she whispered, "Miss Isabel was never buried." Lady Agatha said she drowned, but there was no body, none at all. I began to suspect that Lady Agatha had secrets beyond an awkward son and a cold demeanour. At dinner that night, Lady Agatha raised her glass and declared, "I am pleased to announce the engagement of my son Horace to Lady Eleanor Harcourt." The blood drained from my face. I hadn't agreed to any such thing. I stood, trembling. "Lady Agatha, I am grateful for your hospitality, but I cannot marry someone I do not love." Her smile vanished. "You think you have options," she hissed when we were alone. "You are a penniless orphan, with no dowry, no family. No one would take you but Horace." I fled to my room. The next morning, I awoke with pain in my stomach and bile in my throat. My vision swam. I collapsed on the rug. The physician confirmed what James already suspected. I had been poisoned. Likely foxglove, a deadly tincture if not administered properly. The symptoms matched. James confronted his aunt, but Lady Agatha dismissed the accusation with a scoff. "Do not accuse me of such melodrama," she said. "The girl is delicate." It was likely spoiled meat, but I saw the fear behind her eyes. James was not convinced, nor was I. The days that followed blurred. I remained in bed, weakened, trembling, but watched over. James never left my side. He brought me cool cloths, whispered poems from memory, and never once asked me to love him in return. But I already did. Late one night, I heard movement outside my door. A creak, a sob. I sat upright. My door, usually locked from the outside since the poisoning, was ajar. I slipped from bed, wrapped myself in my shawl, and followed the sound down the corridor into the west wing, the disused part of the house. There, in the darkness, a figure stood by the shattered window in the abandoned nursery. It was Horace. He cradled something in his arms. As I approached, I saw it was a child's doll, ragged and eyeless. "She loved this," he whispered, stroking the doll's face. "But she left. And Mother said you were her." I froze. "Horace, who loved that doll? Was it Isabel?" She screamed when I touched her. "Eyes wide," he said, eyes wide. Screamed like a cat. Mother said she was ungrateful, so we locked her away. He turned to me and I saw it then. His madness was not just the dullness of mind. It was torment, confusion, guilt. "She said you'd make it better," muttered. "But you don't look like her anymore." Suddenly he threw the doll to the floor and bolted past me. I screamed for James. They found Horace at dawn, down by the chapel ruins behind the orchard. He stood barefoot, bleeding from the feet, staring into the mist-filled ravine that cut through the land. James stepped forward carefully. "Horace," he called gently. "Come away from the edge." "Come inside," Horace looked back. "I broke her. I broke Isabel." James reached out a hand, but Horace shook his head. "I wasn't meant to be born. I wasn't meant to be master. It was always you." Then, without another word, Horace stepped off the ledge and disappeared into the mist. His body was recovered an hour later. Lady Agatha collapsed into silence. For days she neither ate nor spoke. I watched her from the drawing-room window as she wandered the rose garden like a ghost. The once commanding matriarch had become a shell. And then, a week later, the final twist of fate arrived. A maid came running from the village with news. A woman had appeared at the parish house, half-starved, wearing rags but bearing a familiar face. Isabel. She had survived. She had fled the hall years ago, living under the name Bella with a kindly widow who never asked questions. A scar on her shoulder confirmed the journal's account, a punishment with a hot poker when she refused to obey. When James and I visited her, she said little. Her voice was soft, hesitant. But when she saw Lady Agatha, she froze. "I'm not here for revenge," she said. "I only want to live." In peace, Lady Agatha wept. She signed over the estate to James willingly and left Greystone within the week, bound for a convent in Yorkshire, choosing a life of seclusion. James proposed to me under the hawthorn tree near the orchard. There was no grand fanfare, just us, the blossoms falling like soft snow and the quiet birdsong of early spring. "I've nothing to offer you but my name, my honour, and a heart that is entirely yours," he said. I accepted. I had loved him from the moment he called me Lady Eleanor with a voice that saw me. We were married in the chapel of a nearby village with Isabel at my side and a few trusted friends in attendance. We left Greystone behind. Years passed. James and I built a home in Devon near the cliffs where the wind smelled of salt and the ocean glistened like diamonds. He opened a school for war orphans. I taught music and read poetry by the fire. Isabel came to live with us for a time. She painted landscapes and spoke slowly, still haunted but healing. In one of her paintings I saw the orchard of Greystone, lit not with shadow but with morning sun. We had 2 daughters, Lydia and Grace, both with their father's smile. Greystone Hall was eventually sold to distant relatives and faded into legend. Some said it was cursed, others said it was haunted. But to me it was simply the place where sorrow had once reigned and where we, against all odds, had chosen love. One day, as I rocked Grace to sleep beneath the hawthorn tree, I found something buried beneath the roots. A tiny, weather-worn doll with no eyes. I wrapped it gently in linen and buried it again, this time with a whisper of prayer and peace. The past may linger in the walls of great houses, but we are not bound by it. We made our own ending, and it was happy. The end. Pray accept my gratitude, dear viewer, for accompanying us through this tale. I trust it has brought you some measure of delight. If the story has pleased you, kindly grace us with your thoughts and do subscribe to this channel that you may be promptly notified when further romances and adventures are unveiled. Until our next meeting, I remain most obliged to you.